Hello and welcome to the first video tutorial from Horse Tender Studio. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to finish a cross-stitched saddle pad. So what you'll need for this is you'll need your saddle pad that you've stitched, and then you'll need a pair of scissors. I actually use two pairs of scissors. I like to use the big pair to make the cuts along the sides, and then I use the smaller pair to do the detail cuts, cutting out around the cutback pad and notching in the corners. So you'll need your pad, you'll need your scissors, you'll also need a piece of white felt. This can be found at craft stores. It's usually really cheap. This one here says they were $4 for $1. And then the last thing you'll need is glue, and I just use the tacky glue, just the basic stuff in the brown bottle. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing that you want to do is take your saddle pad out of the hoop or whatever you use to hold the fabric while you're doing your stitching. And then what we're going to do is take our scissors and we're going to cut the fabric away close to the edge. You want to leave 3 or 4 squares off of the stitching. And it really helps to use sharp scissors. So we just find a line in between the squares and do our cuts along the sides. And on the bottom. I think I actually did 4 on that side, so I'll cut another row off just to make it even all the way around. Okay. So there we have trimmed off the excess fabric all the way around the outside of the pad. Now our next step, and this is what I like to use my little tiny scissors for, sharp scissors, is you actually want to get in and make notches in the corners, and you want to get as close as you can to the stitching, but be really careful not to cut the threads on that corner stitch. This is where really sharp scissors help. So see there, you're cutting the fabric away right up to that corner stitch. And unfortunately, for all my talk about sharp scissors, these scissors are not so sharp anymore. It really helps if you can use the tips and get in there, but as you can see, these aren't doing a whole lot on the tip, so I've kind of got to use the middle of the blade and be extra careful get in there and not nick that thread. There we go. And one more corner to do. A few little pieces of cloth left. Right, there we go. So now we've cut just a notch in all the corners. And then this particular saddle pad is a cutback design. That's pretty much all I do now. I think they fit the models better. You've got the cutback for the horse's neck or mane to fit in there. But it does make them a little more complicated to finish and cut out like this. So what I'll do is I'll do about the same thing I did on the sides. I'll leave about 3 squares, cutting in around there. And then what you want to do is you want to cut in where the stitching stops. There's like a couple of angles and a couple of straight lines in the cut back, and you just want to make a tab for each one of those. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll show you what I mean here. So see, now I've done all the cuts around. Well, I didn't do that one. There we go. So see, now each part of the cutback has a tab that you can fold down. You can fold down the straight side, the angle, the inside straight part, the other angle, and the other straight part. Kind of looks like a mess now, but you'll see as we go a little further along that it makes sense, I promise. Alright. So then we're going to notch out this corner at the top of the cutback. Again, sharper scissors really help. Okay, so here what we've got is the pad all notched in the corners, and then the cutback is all notched in the top corners here, and then we've got our flaps kind of like that we'll be able to bend down. Okay, alright, now our next step is going to be to glue down all of those tabs. Clear everything out here so we can see a little better. And then what I like to do is I like to do one at a time, because if you put glue all the way around, it's going to be dry before you get to each section. Ooh, goodness, that's a lot of glue. Brand new bottle of glue here. A little funky on me. Alright, so that's not supposed to happen. Anyway, alright. And then what you want to do is you want to push your tabs down onto the glue, and you're not supposed to have that much glue, but it works. And just hold them push your fingertips down and hold. It sets up pretty fast. It'll grab pretty quickly. And then what you can do if you want is you can kind of look at the edge. You don't want to roll it over so far that you're pulling on the stitches, but you want to roll it so that the fabric is kind of tucked under the stitching, if that makes any sense. With anything, just practice makes perfect. So that's what you want to see. You don't want to see a whole lot of the fabric on the top edge, but you don't want to pull so hard that these stitches are separating from the other ones. And you can do that while the glue is setting. Is a good time to do it, because it'll hold while you're rolling it around. Okay? This is a full bottle of glue, so I'm going to try to be more careful this time. Get just a little bead going. There we go, that's better. Okay, so you can see just a thin bead of glue, and a lot of times I'll use my fingertip, and kind of work it in a little bit. Can be a little messy, but I wear old clothes and wipe the glue on my pants. Alright, here we go. The long tabs are a little harder just because you've got more fabric that you're trying to wrangle. So what I do is I kind of fold it all over as best I can, and then just hold it with my fingertips for several seconds or so until the glue starts to hold. Make sure it's all pushed down. And then I'll flip it over, and like I said, I'll check the edge and kind of roll that fabric under the stitching. and look at the top, make sure I haven't straight, make sure I haven't pulled it too tight. It looks pretty good. So there's the top edge and one of the sides glued. Give the top another little push. Okay. And now we just keep going. Run another little thin bead of glue along the bottom. Work it in a little bit. There's the glue kind of worked in on the edge. And again, you just want to get it folded over and press it down several seconds. Give it a couple taps, and then we can work the top side. Roll the fabric under. Check the top. Looks pretty good. Now you might notice that sometimes the edge of the fabric will be kind of sticking out like that. There we go. And that's okay, because what we'll do later on is we can kind of trim those corners in a little bit. I don't like to bevel them off before I'm gluing them down, because then it'll start to separate. The cross stitch fabric threads will start to come out. So I like to cut straight in between the squares of fabric to keep it from unraveling while I'm working with it, but we can trim those corners a little bit. We'll do that once we've got everything glued down. Okay, then we have one more long side to do. Work it in a little bit. Like I said, these long sides are pretty much the hardest part, I think, of the whole thing, because trying to get them all folded over at the same time evenly can be a little bit of a challenge, but just get it the best you can and then press and hold. Okay. A little bit of extra glue coming out. It's alright. Okay, then we flip over to the top. Get that rolled under the stitches. And it looks pretty good. Okay. And now we just have this last top section to do, as far as the big pieces. And that one's pretty easy. Give it a good press. Check the top. Looks pretty good. Alright, now is the cut back. And it can be a little challenging to do, but it's basically the same steps all along. Just put on a little bit of glue. And start folding the tabs in. Look at it from the top. Another reason I like to kind of work the glue in with my fingers is it kind of gets rid of some of the excess glue. Because if you have too much glue on there, it'll kind of squish out of the fabric when you fold it over, and it can even squish out of the front where the stitching is, and then you end up with a huge mess. Don't ask me how I know that. Alright. And that looks pretty good. And I usually do the sides, and then I do the bottom one and save the little corners until last, because they can be kind of hard to hang on to. Pull that down. These small pieces stick pretty quickly. Okay, now for the fiddly little corners, that one's not bad. This one's fraying a little bit. Should be okay. Nope, I don't want to stick. Okay, I think we're pretty much done with all of that. Now, like I was saying, you see on these corners, the fabric is fraying a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll come in, and you want to be really careful here not to nick your stitching. But you can come in and you can just kind of trim off the very corners where you might have some of that fabric unraveling a little bit. That one looks okay. That one doesn't look okay. That one looks a little fat right there. Okay. Alrighty. So there's our pad. All cut out, tabs folded over. Now at this point, you can just stop if you want, and your pad is ready to go. If you leave it like this, it's more of a saddle blanket. You know, it's a lot more flexible. And I know there's a lot of people that do them this way. I haven't left any of mine like this. I might in the future, just to kind of see how they work. But what I like to do is I like to go ahead and put a felt backing on them. And so we'll do that next. Now, one thing I do on my pads is I put a little stitch tag with horse tender on there. It's kind of a way I've come up with to sign my saddle pads. When I first started making them, I thought, well, you know, artists usually signs their work, right? So anyway, I just thought it was a fun little thing to do. And what I do is I just trim them to kind of fit in there like so. And then what you'll want to do is on your piece of felt, you'll just want to cut out a piece that's a little bit bigger than the pad. So I've already done that. You want to leave enough room around it so that you've got plenty of room to work in case it gets a little crooked when you put it on or anything like that. You'll still have plenty to work with. So what I'm going to do So I just lay it on there just to kind of make sure everything fits. And you can see through the felt, you can see the outline of the pad just faintly, and you can make sure that it'll be a good fit. And what I do is make sure my little tag fits on there, and then I just put some glue across. To hold the tag. Okay. Do another little test fit. Looks good. So for this, what you want to do is you want to run a thin little bead of glue all along those tabs that you folded over. You don't need a whole lot, but you want to go all the way around the edge. Make sure that the felt holds down tight on the edges, and you want to, I just kind of dot around the cut back a little bit. And then what I also do is I also run a thin bead around the edge of my tag, just so that that all holds down. And then you just want to kind of go a little crazy on the rest of the pad. Just kind of keep an even pressure on your glue bottle and kind of work it around, Okay. And then what I do is I'll kind of hover over, make sure my tag is centered. You don't have to worry about all this if you're not using a tag. This is how I do it. Kind of lay it on there, make sure it looks okay. Make sure it's covering all the edges of the pad underneath, and then press. Just make sure you give it a good press with your fingers all the way around, and then I flip it. Now at this stage you could put a book or something on it if you wanted to. Make sure it really gets set down in there, but I find that I don't really need to do that because the glue sets up pretty fast. I mean, for it to set totally, it takes a little bit of time, but it's pretty much already on there now. So then your very last step is to trim your felt. And again, I use the big scissors. Now you want to go right down the edge, but again, be really careful not to get your stitching in there. What I do is it's kind of hard to explain, but I keep my scissors almost closed like this, see? You don't want to go like this, you know, all wide with your scissors, because then you could possibly nick your stitching. So I keep my scissors almost closed and just kind of nip along, if that makes any sense at all. Okay. And for right now, we'll just go straight across the top of that cut back. We'll deal with that in a minute. Okay. Give it another little press. So there it is, trimmed around the edges. Now next we need to trim out the cut back, and this can be a little tricky. Again, you got to be really careful not to get the stitching. And sharp scissors definitely help, which these are not so much anymore. I need to get a new pair of little scissors. Okay. almost done. Around the bottom. There we go. Looks good. Alright. Sometimes I'll just give it kind of a pull to make sure it's all straight. Alrighty, so there we go. Now, like I said before, you can leave it without the backing and you'll have more of a saddle blanket. It'll be a lot more flexible. But I really like the backing. I think it protects the horse, you know, from the stitching. Can't get snagged on anything. My tag I actually recess into the felt so that it's not rubbing on the horse either. And I think it just gives it a lot more of a saddle pad look. You know, if you look at an actual saddle pad on a horse, they've got a thick pad underneath them. Yeah, they look pretty good. So anyway, I really hope this helped if you're interested in finishing a cross-stitch saddle pad. This is actually a method that I learned from a video that used to be on YouTube, and unfortunately I think it's been taken down. I haven't been able to find it. So I wrote my blog post talking about how I do this with pictures, and I thought, well, why not try to do a video and maybe help some other people like that first video helped me. So anyway, I really hope this helped, and if you have any questions, just post them in the comments below, and I'd be happy to help you. Thanks, and have a great day.